All right, so you're thinking about a career as a wholesale merchant in chemical products, huh? Sounds like you've got big ambitions.
It's definitely a field with huge potential, that's for sure.
It's not just about memorizing the periodic table, though, is it? It's about understanding the whole supply chain right. Like, how do you get those raw materials and turn them into the chemicals that manufacturers need every day?
It's a global game, that's for sure. And the stakes are high. Just imagine, even as a junior merchant, you could be negotiating a contract for a key ingredient in something like lithium-ion batteries.
Wow, that's a lot of responsibility early on.
Definitely. The demand is enormous.
So it's not just about the science then, it's about people skills and understanding the market. You've got to have a bit of that entrepreneurial spirit too, I imagine.
Definitely. Yeah.
RoleCatcher actually breaks this whole career path down. They go from entry level all the way up to managing your own team, and they actually highlight how valuable internships and trade shows can be, especially when you're first starting out. Have you been to any trade shows?
Oh, they're amazing.
Yeah.
Especially when you're first starting out. It's like a crash course in the entire industry. You get to actually talk to suppliers face to face and see the newest technologies. You get a real feel for what's happening in the market. It's one thing to read about trends, but it's another to actually be there and see it all happen right in front of
Yeah, it's like the difference between reading a cookbook and actually tasting the food.
you.
You get a much better understanding of everything involved. So it sounds like this isn't the kind of career where you just stop learning after you graduate. You have to constantly evolve, especially with new regulations and technologies popping up all the time.
You've got to stay ahead of the curve, that's for sure. Like, look at AI. It's already being used to make logistics way more efficient. We're not just talking about tracking shipments here. Imagine using blockchain to make sure that the raw materials you're using are ethically sourced.
It gives your clients that extra confidence that their products are sustainable.
Exactly. That's a huge selling point these days.
It sounds like being tech savvy is essential in this field.
You can't avoid it. It's everywhere.
And RoleCatcher knows this because they actually have their own AI-powered tools, and they're designed to give you an edge when you're applying for jobs. They've even got something called the RoleCatcher Copilot AI. Have you heard of it? It helps you get your resume ready and practice answering interview questions.
Oh, it's amazing how much technology is changing the game, isn't it?
It's like having your own personal career coach right in your pocket.
Exactly. But even with all the fancy tools in the world, you still have to be able to show what you've accomplished. And I'm not just talking about listing off skills on your resume. I'm talking about creating a portfolio that really shows what you can do, like close those deals, show them the challenges you've overcome, and how much value you can bring to a company.
Yeah, it's like the difference between saying I'm a good cook and inviting someone over for a 5-course meal that you made from scratch.
That's a great way to put it.
The proof is in the pudding, as they say.
I like that.
And speaking of showcasing your expertise, RoleCatcher also highlighted how important certifications can be. Even if they're not mandatory, do you think those are real game changers in this industry?
Oh, absolutely. It's like having a stamp of approval from the industry itself. It shows a potential employer that you're serious about this and that you're willing to go the extra mile, which can make all the difference when you're up against a lot of competition.
It's that something extra on your resume that makes you stand out.
Exactly.
Now, I know you're probably thinking about climbing that career ladder.
Definitely. Who isn't?
So let's unpack what each stage really involves. RoleCatcher starts with entry-level wholesale merchant in chemical products.
It sounds pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it does. What does that look like day to day, though?
Well, at the entry level, you're really just getting your feet wet.
Hmm.
You're learning the basics. Think like digging into market research, figuring out who the potential clients and suppliers are. You might even get to help out with negotiations, shadowing the more senior merchants.
So it's not just fetching coffee and making copies then.
No, no, no. You're getting some real hands-on experience.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. And it's not just about the work itself either. RoleCatcher's example profile for this stage mentions coordinating logistics to make sure deliveries happen on time.
So you're seeing that whole journey of a chemical from when it's produced to when it gets delivered.
Exactly. It's about understanding how all the different parts of the supply chain work together, the big picture. And this stage is also about showing that you're serious about this career path.
Okay, how do you do that?
Well, RoleCatcher's example actually mentions certifications, like the Certified Supply Chain Professional. It's like
Yeah.
you're saying, hey, I'm not just here for a temporary gig. I'm here to build a career.
It's that extra step that can really set you apart, especially when you're trying to land one of those junior positions.
Exactly.
Speaking of which, RoleCatcher calls the next stage junior wholesale merchant in chemical products. What's the biggest difference between that and the entry level?
It's like going from riding shotgun to actually getting behind the wheel.
I like that analogy.
You're taking on more responsibility. You're the one managing the relationships with buyers and suppliers. You're negotiating deals. But now it's for much larger quantities. Remember that lithium-ion battery example we talked about?
Yeah.
This could be you. You could be the one closing that deal, the one who's directly impacting the company's bottom line.
Talk about pressure.
There's definitely a lot more on the line.
That's a whole different ballgame. They're not just assisting anymore, they're the ones driving the results.
One thing that really stood out to me in RoleCatcher's description was the emphasis on not just reacting to the market, but anticipating what's going to happen next.
Being proactive.
Yeah, it's like you're always one step ahead.
Exactly. A good junior wholesale merchant doesn't just follow the market, they analyze it, they look for new opportunities that are emerging, and then they bring those insights to their team. It's like that aha moment when you see a pattern before anyone else does.
You got it.
And RoleCatcher's example profile for this stage actually reflects that. They use phrases like successfully developed and maintained strong relationships and closed trade deals involving large quantities. They're not just listing tasks, they're highlighting the impact they've had.
Showing, not just telling.
Yeah. And they've clearly taken the initiative to broaden their skill set, too. They've added certifications like supplier diversity and distribution and warehousing.
They're not just resting on their laurels, that's for sure.
Talk about dedication. It's obvious they're always looking for new knowledge and skills. But let's be real for a second. It's not all about passion and professional development, right?
Yeah.
It's about the paycheck, too. What's the financial upside of all this hard work?
The million-dollar question, right? Well, it obviously depends on your experience, where you are in the world, and the size of the company you're working for. But RoleCatcher gives a salary range of $60,000 to $100,000 per year for wholesale merchants in chemical products.
That's a pretty good salary. But I imagine those higher figures come with more responsibility, longer hours maybe?
Oh, absolutely. More stress, too, probably. It's the classic trade-off, right? Higher pay usually means more demands.
That makes sense. Speaking of trade-offs, I really appreciated how RoleCatcher laid out the pros and cons of this career path.
It's good to be aware of both sides.
Yeah. On the plus side, they highlighted the earning potential, which we just talked about. There's also a lot of room for growth and the chance to work with all sorts of clients in different industries. It's not just about beakers and test tubes. It's a global field.
It really is. Like, I think about it, chemicals are everywhere. We're talking pharmaceuticals, agriculture, manufacturing. It's a field with a huge impact.
It's amazing how many things rely on chemicals.
It's easy to forget sometimes.
But like you said before, it's not all going to be easy. RoleCatcher also mentions how competitive it is to get those top jobs, and it sounds like you're going to be working long hours and constantly having to learn new things as the industry changes.
You've got to love learning, that's for sure. This isn't a career where you can just coast on what you already know. You have to be adaptable, curious, and always ready for a new challenge.
Always sharpening the saw, as they
Yeah.
say. What if someone is listening to this and thinking, this sounds incredible, but I don't have any experience with chemicals. I'm not sure my skills would transfer. What would you say to them? Does RoleCatcher offer any guidance for career changers?
They actually do. They have this really cool feature that analyzes the skills you already have and suggests careers that might be a good fit based on that. So even if you don't have a background in, say, chemical engineering, you might be surprised by how much of your experience from other jobs could be relevant. It's worth looking into.
That's reassuring to hear. It's all about making those connections and seeing how your past experience can be valuable in a new setting. Now let's talk about something that's becoming more and more important these days. Sustainability. It's a hot topic for a good reason. How is this growing awareness impacting the world of chemical wholesaling?
It's a huge shift, and it's about time if you ask me. Consumers are demanding more transparency. They want to know what's in the products they buy. They want to know if the chemicals in their clothes, their cleaning products, even their food are ethically sourced and good for the environment.
And that puts a lot of pressure on the entire supply chain to make some changes.
Absolutely. It's not enough to just offer the cheapest option anymore. Wholesale merchants are on the front lines of this whole shift. They're the ones connecting buyers with suppliers who are using ethical sourcing, sustainable practices, and being transparent about how they make their products.
So they're like gatekeepers in a way.
Exactly. They're making sure that the products moving through the supply chain are meeting these new standards that consumers are demanding.
That's a big responsibility. It takes a deep understanding of more than just the chemicals themselves. You need to know about the entire life cycle of a product. Where do the raw materials come from? How is it disposed of at the end of its life?
You have to be able to see the big picture.
And be able to advocate for more responsible practices at every stage of the process.
Absolutely. And that's where those soft skills come in communication, collaboration, diplomacy even. You're not just negotiating prices and quantities anymore. You're advocating for change. You're building consensus among stakeholders who might have very different priorities.
So it's not enough to just know your chemical formulas. You have to be a leader, an advocate, a champion for these sustainable practices.
You got it.
Now, I'm curious, how do you even break into this field? What's the hiring process like?
Well, it usually starts with the interview, right? And I know how nerve-wracking those can be. But luckily, RoleCatcher actually has a whole section on their website dedicated to interview prep. It's incredibly helpful, especially if you're feeling a little anxious about the whole thing.
Interviews can definitely be intimidating, especially for a specialized field like this.
Oh, for sure. But RoleCatcher provides a bunch of sample interview questions that are tailored specifically for wholesale merchants in chemical products. They even have this AI-powered tool that helps you come up with answers and practice how you're going to deliver them. It's like having a personal interview coach right there in your pocket.
That's incredible. It sounds like they've thought of everything to help people prepare.
They really have. And it goes beyond just the interview. They have this huge database of employer profiles, over 9 million worldwide. You could do your research on potential employers, get a sense of their company culture and everything.
Talk about doing your homework.
It's all about being prepared.
That extra level of preparation can definitely give you an edge.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, and RoleCatcher gives you the tools to feel confident and prepared throughout the entire job search.
So we've talked about the skills, the sustainability factor, the interview process. But what about the day-to-day reality of the job? What's it actually like to be a wholesale merchant in chemical products?
Okay, let's paint a picture.
Okay, let's hear it. Imagine we're a wholesale merchant in chemical products. What are we doing on a typical day?
Well, it's not your average desk job, that's for sure. You could be on the phone negotiating a huge contract for a chemical that's used in biodegradable plastics one day, and the next you're touring some high-tech chemical plant.
Making sure they're following all the sustainability practices we talked about.
Exactly. And don't forget, you've got to stay on top of market trends too. You're always analyzing, anticipating changes in demand, looking for new opportunities. It's fast-paced. You got to be on your toes.
Sounds like you need a certain personality type to handle all that. What do you think are some of the most important qualities for a wholesale merchant in chemical products to have?
You definitely need to be comfortable with some risk. This isn't a career for someone who wants a predictable 9 to 5. Deals are going to fall through sometimes, you're going to face rejection, and you'll have to learn how to deal with some tough personalities.
You've got to be resilient.
Absolutely. But it's not just about being tough, though. You have to be good with people. Building relationships with clients, suppliers, even your colleagues. It's essential in this business.
So it's finding that balance between being firm when you're negotiating, but also maintaining those long-term partnerships.
Exactly. You've got to be able to play hardball, but also play fair. And let's not forget communication skills. You're going to be doing a lot of writing and talking in this job, whether you're drafting contracts, presenting proposals, or just explaining something technical. You have to be able to communicate clearly.
So you've got to be able to speak the language of the scientists and the CEOs, bridging that gap between the technical side and the business side.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
You need to be comfortable talking about chemical compositions 1 minute and profit margins the next. It's a pretty unique skill set.
So we've talked about the skills, the challenges, the rewards. But at the end of the day, why should someone choose this path? What's the big takeaway here? Why be a wholesale merchant in chemical products?
Because you get to be a part of an industry that's constantly changing and growing, an industry that's involved in every part of our lives, really. Think about it. The food we eat, the clothes we wear, the medicine we take, even the technology we use every day, it all relies on chemicals in some way.
It's about being a part of something much bigger than yourself.
Exactly. And now, with this huge push for sustainability and ethical sourcing, wholesale merchants are in a position to really make a difference, to advocate for better practices, to help shape the future of the industry.
That's a powerful message. It sounds like RoleCatcher's insights and resources can be a huge help to anyone who's interested in this field. So for our listeners out there who are thinking about a career as a wholesale merchant in chemical products, what's the one piece of advice you would give them as they start this journey?
I would say embrace the challenge. Never stop learning, and never underestimate the importance of building strong, genuine relationships. The chemical industry is changing all the time, and the people who thrive in this field are adaptable, resourceful, and always looking for ways to add value.
It's not just about understanding the chemicals themselves, it's about understanding the people, the markets, and how to build those lasting partnerships. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the world of wholesale merchants in chemical products. We hope you've gained some valuable insights into the challenges, the rewards, and the incredible impact this career path offers. It's a competitive world out there, but with the right skills, a positive attitude, and a passion for this ever-evolving industry, you can achieve some amazing things. Until next time, thanks for listening.